Angela Wolf here. In this final episode of Wrap Dresses, I thought a simple knit pullover would be perfect. So this is gathered in the side, you still have the wrap, kind of a faux wrap, and it's a knit, easy to do. So let's take a look at this pattern. The back is the same, it's just a knit. You don't have darts or anything like that because knits are easy to fit. This is the left side, which it just fits fine, nothing really happened to it. It goes from one side to the other. The big change, though, was in this piece. I actually included these lines for those of you that like to pattern design. This is how it started, and I slashed into the edges and spread this out, and that's where we come up with all of these gathers. So all of this gathering here is going to be put together, gathered to the side, and we'll sew this together. So let me just show you the parts on here that you might really like to see. Get this out of the way. So I'm just going to use a solid color. I thought it'd be easier for you to see here. And again, I showed this in a previous lesson where the front portion, we tucked under that side. This is the hem, the front hem. And run a cover stitch or top stitch. You could use a twin needle. So I've already pressed that. I didn't think you needed to see that twice. And notice I gave myself little slashes here because this part will be sewn into the seam. That's the hem. This is the seam. So this side, we really don't need to do anything with except to finish the neckline. Just like I showed earlier, you're going to sew the shoulder seams, the front to the back at the shoulder seams, and then we're going to finish this entire edge. But let me show you another way to do that than what I showed you earlier. So I have strips of fabric here cut. They're cut about 2 inches wide. I press it because I use this press edge as a guide. And I'll just insert it into this side. And then while I'm up here, so you can see what I'm going to do, I'm going to add that to the top neckline. And from here all the way down to here, I'm going to gather because we're going to insert that into the side seam. So let's go to the sewing machine. All right, so to start the neckline, we could just fold this over and attach it like I showed you earlier. But let me show you another way, because sometimes with a knit, you don't want that top, if it happens to open a little bit or gap open, which hopefully it's not doing that. I'm going to wrap this all the way around the neck edge. So you would do this all the way from one side to the other. Again, I'm just going to show you on the one side. I'm using a knit, but you don't need to use a zigzag stitch for this one. You can use just a regular straight stitch. Again, as I go around the curved edges of the neckline, I'm going to give this a little tug. How much of a tug? If you're worried, what you could do is baste this in place first using a 5.0 stitch length. That way, if you have wrinkles or you don't like it, you can take it out very easily. If you have a serger, you could also run this through a serger right now. And this is the front area that you really need to give it a little bit more of a tug. It might look wrinkled right away as soon as I pull it out of the sewing machine, but once it's pressed and on your body, it won't at all. All right. Just gonna trim that off. Let's go press this into place. Just gonna slide this open a little bit, give it a little pressing. And all the way up to the shoulder. Now while I'm at the iron, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this around, fold it in half once, and then flip it over, covering up that seam. This is a nice finish for a neck edge because it covers up the seam that you previously did, and there's no serging or anything like that that comes out. Just going to put this here to hold this. So the reason that this is just a little bit different is because on one of those first dresses, we attached it like this, but we were using bias. And this is just a strip of fabric right across on the cross grain. All right, that looks pretty good. Take it back to the sewing machine. And I'm just going to stitch along the edge. And I'm just going to do this for a little ways, and then we're going to go to the gathering. So I've given you a few different ways to finish the edge on this knit. Just make sure you're capturing that seam allowance underneath. stitch. You could also use on this, if your fabric is a little bit difficult to work with, you could use the triple stitch. And what that does is if you are using a fabric that maybe the top is really tight on you and you know it's going to have to stretch to get around your neckline, the triple stitch will stretch. All right, and just go a little bit further, and then we'll go to the gathering. And again, just wrapping as I go, I'm enclosing that seam allowance. All right. So there's my neckline. It'll still stretch to get around my head and it won't pop the stitches out. So remember, the gathering, it was over on this side here. I marked it. So I'm going to change the stitch to a basting stitch. And I also want to leave out a little bit of extra thread there. And what I'm going to do is just do a stay stitch. You could also do a back stitch, but sometimes on these thin knits, it can get embedded into your plate here. So I'm just going to do a stay stitch, and now I'm going to baste. Using a 5.0 stitch all the way down. There. Don't use your automatic thread cutter on this. Pull the thread out. Give yourself a lot of extra thread here. And then before I go back to the big table, I'm just going to pull this. I think you'll see it a little bit better from down here. I'm pulling the bobbin thread, okay? Not the top one, the bobbin. It's easier to gather. So now you can see this is what it's going to look like when it's on the body. So let's go up and I'll pin this in place. Again, this piece is on the bottom because it always wraps over to the left. I mean, it doesn't have to, but that's usually the look. And I have markings right here. Lay this down. Here we go. Now this can always be adjusted for whatever you need for your fit, but I'm going to pin in the seam allowance. You could also use clips to hold this into place. And right here. So let's just compare real quick. Up here, you can see how this goes right under the bust and gathers in the side. So if I wanted to, I could extend this gathering if I was changing the pattern a little bit, but this is going to be what this pattern looks like. And then this actually will not be attached to the side seam. So this is the rest of the side seam right here. This gets pushed out of the way. And now let's go to the other side. You would have finished this neckline, by the way. And put just a couple pins to keep this side in place. Now on this side, this is the section that would have been finished, and that's going to get pushed out of the way. So this is really important. If you don't get this little section here out of the way, it'll sew into your side seam, and same with this one. So that's our front piece. I usually will go back and baste that together first, just to make sure it looks okay. You want to make sure it's not puckering, and this obviously is going to be stretched on the body. Now let's take our back piece. And our back piece is here. I think I have the wrong side marked. I always put little X's on the wrong side, especially if the fabric looks so similar. And I'm just going to pin this in place, and we'll just stitch down one of these sides real quick. There we go. And again, that little part's out of the way. As a reminder, if you're going to use pins on knits, make sure they're in the seam allowance so you don't puncture the fabric. Now here is where if you have a serger, you'd want to use a 4-thread overlock. It's a little sturdier. If not, go back to just using a straight stitch, and probably you could use a zigzag stitch on this, to be honest, because then if you pull it over your head, it won't stretch out, but I'm just going to use a straight stitch for now, just so you can see what this looks like. If you use a zigzag stitch, make sure that the width is only maybe 1.0. Not a real wide one. I'm going right through all those gathers. I'm leaving them to the side here. You can see those? This dress is such a simple, fast dress to make. And you know, I mentioned earlier, if you're not into dresses, this would make a great top. All right. So let's go back up here and see what this looks like. Okay. Looks pretty good. So this is the back piece, this is the front. I forgot to mention, by the way, before I started, I cut this off. So this would actually meet in the side. But here is the front here. That's what I get for playing around, right? There's your hem. There's the gathers in the side. Here's your shoulder on this side, and here's your shoulder on this side. The next thing I'll do is just attach the back to this seam here. And what we are left with is we've got the gathering. You can see on my neckline, I did the same wrap that I just showed you. So that way, if this comes out, you're not stuck with a bunch of serging under here. You can't see that. The nice gathering on here. I did the cover hem to here, and I also did the cover hem for the whole hem. Fast and easy to do. If you don't have a cover stitch, use the twin needle. And on the back, it's just a simple back. So that is a wrap for our wrap dresses. So we went from using a rayon to a very simple style. Then we added a little pizzazz with some ruffles. Then we went on and added some seams and a belt. And now we are back to the basics with a simple knit dress. I hope you enjoyed this sew along. Can't wait to see your wrap dress.